Hey racers, Salami here with Slater. We're going to show you how to tune up your brand new slot car to greatly improve its performance out of the box without any special tools or equipment. We have several new cars here, one of which we're going to use for our demo. We've got a Ferrari 488, a C7 Corvette, a Mercedes AMG, another Corvette, a Nissan GTR, and a LaFerrari. If you're wondering what these playing cards are for, that's how we're going to select our car. We got matching cards here. We're just going to shuffle those up, and we're shuffling, and going to pick a card. Pick a card. 3. Number 3 is the Mercedes AMG. To make some room to work, I'm going to take these losers and move them out of the way. Actually, they're not losers. They will be winners eventually once we get those tuned in, but for right now, we're going to work with that Mercedes. Your car will probably never run as poorly as it does as the day that you take it out of the case. That's just the way it is until you do some tuning. We're going to demonstrate a basic tune on the car, and even though it's basic, it does provide about 95% of your gains as far as performance of the car is concerned, and without any special tools or equipment. There are techniques for more advanced tuning if you really want to get the extra 0.01 seconds off your lap time. So unless you're in an ultra competitive racing environment, this quick method will be more than adequate for most people. We're doing this demo with a Carrera Digital, however the process is going to be pretty much the same with the Carrera Evolution car or even with other manufacturers like Scale Electric. We're taking the body off so that we can oil the rotating parts on the inside. We're using a magnetic dish to catch the screws, otherwise these screws bounce off the bar top and roll away and get lost. And although they do come oiled from the factory, this is just a sanity check. We have this hobby oil with the needle applicator, and any hobby shop, even if they don't carry slot cars, if they carry trains, they should have this oil. We're lubing 6 points on the car here, 1 drop each on the rear bushing of the motor, each of the axle bushings, and then the front bushing of the motor. Now you can oil the axles with the body on, that needle oiler will get in there, but you do need to take the body off to oil the motor bushings. Don't put oil on the gears, those are nylon, they're basically self-lubricating. Again, these cars should come oiled already, but we do this just in case. Here's a clip of what a car sounds like when the axles don't have enough oil.
I got it. Should be here. Here we go. Yeah.
Carrera calls these double sliding contacts, we just call them pickups, but when they come brand new, they're going to be pretty flat to the chassis here, and you're not going to get real good contact. First thing we're going to do though is just flare these just a little bit at the ends. You don't really have to do it much, you just have to be sure that they're not completely stuck together, and then they will flare the rest of the way on their own as you drive the car. And then you want to bend these in a way that they essentially form a spring. This way they'll keep some downward pressure on the track at all times, make real good contact. Carrera says to bend them up in this fashion. This is how I do it. Slater curves his in the opposite direction as he feels this creates more contact area with the braid on the track. Either way works fine. You just want to be sure that you have that spring effect on the braids. This is especially important for sections of track like bank turns or bridge sections. Because of the curvature of the track, it can pull the braids up off the track just a little bit, and if these are completely flat, you might lose contact altogether. Here's another use for that magnetic dish. When we drop the we drop a screw on the carpet or somewhere and we can't find it, we just wave this thing around until you hear a click, and usually...
Don't see it over here. I'm assuming it's over here in the...
Oh, hear the click?
There it is.
There it is.
Yeah. Right there.
So, I got, while Slater's doing that, I got a visual aid here. Okay, so the biggest bang for your buck when you're tuning, and the biggest reason your car is going to drive like garbage, is that your tires aren't true. Most of the time, you're going to pull these out. This is a profile, is a profile of the tire? Yeah. And they're going to be, a lot of times, most of the time, they're going to be cupped. You see this here? And so you're really only riding on the edges of the tires. Every now and again, they'll be bowed, or you're kind of bulging in the middle, but usually. So anyway, what we're trying to do is we want to make this flat, completely flat, and that way your contact patches the entire width of the tire, not just the edges. So yeah, if it's bowed, we want to make it flat. If it's cupped, we want to basically shave off these edges here, and then our profile is super duper flat, and we get the maximum amount of gription. So in order to true our tires, to make sure we get that flat profile, this is our setup. We've got 220 grit sandpaper that's taped to the track, and that way it doesn't move. And we've got it centered so that you're only going to be doing one tire at a time, depending on what lane you're in. Okay? And this is important because this is somewhat stressful on the motor, and doing both tires at the same time can really be difficult. And so when you do one at a time, it's less stress on the motor, and it's actually a little bit easier and faster as well. We're running the tires just for a few seconds on the sandpaper, just so we can demonstrate how irregular the tires come out of the box. The light spots on the tire is where the sandpaper had contacted the tire, and the dark spots are areas that didn't contact it, so you can see exactly how irregular this tire is. So we're going to put this back on the tuning track and make these tires very consistent. We're holding the back of the car up so it's just lightly contacting the sandpaper. You don't want this to bog the motor down too much. Notice the side-to-side sweeping too, that way you're not running over a loaded up section of sandpaper. After about 10 seconds or so, pull the car back up, take a look at the tire. You can see it's starting to get better and more consistent across the entire width of the profile. The right side's not done yet, but we're going to do the left for a little while here. Also, be sure to keep the car level side to side so you don't end up with an angle on your tire. Taking a look at the left side tire now, you can see it's a lot better, but there is still areas, you can see the dark spots there. Those are low spots or high spots depending on the orientation. When everything looks consistent, you don't have any dark spots on the tire, go ahead and clean off all the loose rubber with some tape. You can see that loose rubber coming off on the tape here. Then go ahead and run the car on the track for a few laps. This isn't so much to see if the tires grip better, but rather it will make the tires a little bit dirty. And just that little bit of dust that gets on the tires will definitely indicate if there's still low spots. Some might be wondering why we're doing this with the body on the car, because you're going to get all that rubber dust and debris up inside the car and on the chassis. Well, the fact is that you really have nothing to hold on to if you don't have the body on the car when we do this. Afterwards, we'll just take the body back off and clean it out with some compressed air and a brush. So the process: grind, clean the tires, run on the track, repeat as necessary until you no longer see dark spots or irregularities on the tire. Another method instead of tape is simply lick your thumb, place it against the tire, and then just rotate the axle with your other thumb, and you can feel all that debris and dust coming off of the tire. I actually do this before heat races and main races, not just when I'm tuning my tires. One thing you might notice with a brand new car is that it seems slow at first, the top end speed I mean, and every lap that you run it seems to pick up a little more speed. That's because the motor's starting to break in, the brushes are starting to seat on the armature of the motor. Now there are techniques to break in the motor by removing it from the car, running it on a battery while it's submerged in a glass of water or oil. For our purposes, we don't find that's necessary. The motor will break in on its own just by running the car on the track. And even when you do pick up a little speed on the top end as the motor breaks in, it's not going to have that much of an impact on your lap times. By far, the biggest impact you're going to see is when your tires are tuned. That'll allow you to carry more speed through a turn, brake a little bit later and heavier coming into a turn, and also accelerate sooner coming out of a turn. This GT3 that we were using for the demo isn't quite ready yet. We need to work on the tires a little bit more, so we don't have any before and after video or lap times to show yet. However, we do have this car that we prepared earlier, a Mercedes-AMG C63 DTM. Out of the box, we put it on the track, ran quite a few laps with it, didn't really handle that well. Then the video shows it, and so do the lap times. Best time on that car was a 10.336. I may have been able to get an extra half second out of it, but that car is a handful. Some very keen observers may have noticed that this car isn't supposed to be able to run on this track with that number 2 bank in the far corner. Stick around to the end of the video, we'll show you what the problem is and how we fix it. After tuning, we put it back on the track and ran a few laps, and the difference was amazing.
Dude, you're in a 7.8.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ridiculous.
That's soon?
On the first tire string? Yeah. A couple things to keep in mind. As you run the car, the tires will wear, and sometimes they wear unevenly. So after hundreds of laps, you might notice that you're getting some of those dark spots on your tires again where they're not making full contact with the track, in which case you just go back in for a real quick retune and you're back in business. You might also notice the same thing as the tires age. When they age, they do shrink a little bit. It's very, very, very small. However, you will notice it when you look at the wear pattern on your tire. And again, same thing, go back in for a real quick retune, you're back in business. Again, this is a very quick basic tune to get your car running a lot better out of the box. So if you got your own track, you're on with your kids, you got guys come over, drink beer and race on Saturday nights, this is all you need. If you race down at the local hobby shop against a bunch of really competitive racers, slot car hardliners I guess we call them, then this is just the beginning. As mentioned earlier, this AMG isn't supposed to be able to run on a track with a number 2 bank turn, and it won't out of the box as demonstrated in the following clip. Wow. 230 bank. You can hear that scrape in the back end. Rear tires are not really contacting it all. That sounds like no. Because of the curvature of the bank track, you're essentially driving in a concave section of track like a bowl, and these strakes in the back are contacting the track and lifting the rear wheels. The tighter the turn, the more pronounced that curvature is, so on a 3 or a 4 radius bank turn, this car is fine, but on a 2, it's not. So as long as you don't care about your car looking 100% correct to the real thing, you can do this. So we need to grind down these strakes just a little bit so they don't drag on the track. Now we use a belt sander, but you can just use like a sanding block or a file or anything like that. If you've used the information in this video to tune your new slot car, please let us know how it worked out for you. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and also let us know what types of videos you'd like to see us do next.